Thank you to everybody. If you know anything about me, boxing is my sport, and I say sport brings people and communities together. Sport, whatever your sport of choice is, even if you do not like sport, is something that we should all enjoy doing, whether it's art, culture, but it's the people and the connections that we make. Because when we learn from each other, we help break down the bias, to break down the hatred, and hate takes up so much time of our energy. But I say being nice is easy, because being nice, it takes less muscles in your mouth to smile than it does to frown. So more smiling, more connection. And I'd love the day that we don't need to have things like the World Gay Boxing Championships, different days, and we just celebrate humanity. And by joining us today, you're helping make that happen.
And the first speaker for this morning is Celia, who will share from bathroom to boardroom and how to be really an ally, which is very much our focus for the forum today, on how to be an ally for the trans and gender non-binary community.
I'm going to talk a little bit about bathroom to boardroom and why this is so important. So just to introduce myself, I'm an Asian immigrant. I am an entrepreneur, a musician, a photographer, a filmmaker, a hiker, blogger, a public speaker, most of all a parent, and I'm married to a beautiful cisgender woman. While I have all these intersectionalities, when I came out in my community after working for 20 plus years of experience in the corporate industry, especially in healthcare and life sciences, I had so much of equity that I built a lot of value to the company. I was in a senior level in the company, but everything came crashing down very quickly when I started coming out and identifying as a trans or a gender non-binary person. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the myth and the misconceptions that people have about bathrooms. The important thing is when I remember a time in 2015, I came out in my community and I was sharing to the audience about, what I was doing and especially how I wanted to be an ally to the community. I shared my story. And while after I shared the story, it was in the newspaper, local newspaper. When the news came out, the letters to the editor was so damaging. It was so discouraging. The comment was, here's a man in a dress who needs medical help. Here's a man in a dress who needs medical help. All the important things that I did in my life, nothing mattered to people. They just completely marginalized me to a point where they didn't even want to, probably they put me at the bottom of the food chain. And that's the way people started looking at me. And I had two choices at the time. I could either keep sulking about it or build a community of allies and start working. And I did the second thing. I started working with my allies. I started working with people out of the trans community, out of the LGBTQ community also, and building that kind of an allyship. I started as a transgender activist and I ended up being, and today I'm a human rights activist because human values are important to me. And I remember a time that even today, after the government has changed, Iowa and Tennessee, they still have bathroom bills where they don't want to let people use the bathroom. Bathroom is a place where it's so essential and vital for human beings. People are not in the bathroom to scare anyone. There is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of political disagreements in terms of bathrooms, why trans people should not use bathrooms. And to me, if I'm asked to use a male bathroom, I don't think I will fit in there. And even if I try to, I don't think I'll be welcome there. And the most important thing is I will get harassed, bullied, and that's what happens today in a lot of countries. And if you have seen the movie Hidden Figures, you will probably realize that the three African-American women, the Black women who were in NASA, had to go from one building to another when they had to go to the restroom and when they had to use the bathroom. It was such a demeaning act. And this is what I was talking about when I mentioned about Hidden Figures. And Hidden Figures is repeating again. There's a systemic discrimination that has always been there in this country, in US, and it's continuing again and again. When we look at it, it's always about, how do you want to hire trans people? or I want to make sure that I hire people and I want to make sure that they are in the company, but they don't accept the trans employees, they just tolerate. And it's really not about acceptance. It's there is a lot of gap between diversity, inclusion, and belonging. The sense of belonging is not there in the companies. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pyramid that we see today in the companies. I'm going to share with you that happened, something that happened just I would say a couple of weeks back. I applied for a job in a program management job in a biopharmaceutical, and I wanted to, as a part of my career, I consult for biopharmaceuticals and I do strategy for these companies. And when I applied for one of the positions where I was supposed to be a program manager, I went through the whole recruiting process, and the talent team was very much happy with what I did. And they did a background check. And here I was, almost ready to have an introduction with the client who was supposed to hire me. And she was a person, a brown person of color. She was from South Asia. And as soon as she saw me in the call, I could see that she was not comfortable. And the call that was supposed to be there for an hour just got over in half an hour. And I never heard from them again. This was the last day I was planning to join this company. It was just a meet and greet meeting. It didn't go well. And that's the kind of discrimination we are facing even today. And think about it. That company has a corporate equality index of 100%. And that company is an amazing D&I company. It has an amazing D&I program. It has an amazing ERG group, and they are very friendly to the LGBTQ community. But still, we have such issues happening. You know why? Because the change needs to happen at not from the letterhead of the company, but in the hearts of the employees. It needs to come from the board. And even if it comes from the board, every level of management in the company needs to be an ally. It's not just the board and the executive team that tells us that, hey, this is what needs to happen, but it also needs to be in the immediate supervisors. I'll give you another example. When I came out, I was managing a $250 million portfolio for a clinical trials company called Quintiles. I was managing this portfolio, and I realized that um, most of the things that I was doing with this company, when I came out, after I came out, I gave my resume to one of the financial firms, and I said, you know, I have this amazing experience. I was a senior director in this company. I was 3 levels below the CEO. I gave all the big spiel. And after they looked at my resume, they looked at me and said, can you do a case manager job? And I was almost cracking up. I said, I built businesses across the world. I traveled to Mumbai and I established build, operate, and transfer centers for like $30 million. And you are giving me a job of a case manager just because of the way I look. You have looked at my resume, and my resume speaks volumes, but there is some kind of an unconscious bias in your mind. And even though they were so open and accepting, that happened. 85% of the companies today in the world have D&I D&I policies. They have very inclusive community. But if you actually percolate it down, almost 53% of the LGBTQ community have faced practical jokes about themselves. And the number is even higher when it comes to the transgender community, because you're completely different. You look different. The issues that trans community goes through is a little bit more, I would say, than the LG and B community. So there are a lot of issues that we need to think about. You know, how do we build that allyship at every level? Because a company, if you look at this structure, a company is nothing but a community of professionals working towards one common goal, the mission statement in that particular company. You look at productivity, you look at profitability, and you look at how relevant you are in the industry. And that's what the company needs to do. I wanted to talk a little bit about the way the workforce was organized. You know, there was a lot of time where men were dominating the business, the companies. Men were calling the shots. And I remember, I'm going to share a lot of my personal experience because that's what we are here for. I remember applying for a financial company at a senior director level, and this was in a transgender job fair. And they got my resume. They loved my resume as usual. They said, you have 20 plus years of experience managing businesses. We need someone like you. They took my resume, and they did not. The senior vice president of that financial company did not expect a trans person to have this kind of an experience. She was looking at my resume for a while, and she said, Celia, I've never come across a resume like this. But she was honest. She said, I'm going to tell you something, Celia. Don't misunderstand me. I'm going to give your resume to our board and to our executive management, but I don't think they're going to like you. I said, why? Oh, they are just white old men. You know, you know how that is. And I said, I don't understand. Just give me one opportunity, one interview. I can prove to them that I will be a value to that company. And she said, I will try, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. She called me after 2 weeks and she said, Celia, I'm not going to lie to you. Even if they call you, they just want to see you because they've never had people like you in, competing for this kind of job. Discrimination right there. We have discrimination right there in California, in companies that are actually coming to trans job fairs. Now, women are fighting to be in the board as much as men have been in the board. There's a lot of diversity that needs to happen in the board. 27% of youth in California identify as gender non-binary. In 2025, 60% of the workforce is going to be millennials. Now, a large population of the millennials are so open to the LGBTQ community. There's so much of change coming in the workforce. Workforce is no longer going to be just white men or just brown men or black people or black men, but it's going to be an intersectionality of different races, ethnicities, different class and culture. And I found it so interesting that, I'm originally from India. I've lived half my life in India. I was even working in India before I came here. When I was speaking to some of the organizations in India, like KPMG and Goldman Sachs, the funny part was they said, Celia, people like you at your level don't exist in India. And I said, look deeper into your organization. They have not come out. It's not that they are not there. It's just that your company has not given an opportunity for them to come out. And that's the reason why India has not moved forward. They always look at the transgender community as the Hijra community. Hijra community is just one part of the transgender community. There's a lot of invisible people, and like me in India, who are still not able to come out because of the cultural stigma and the social stigma that still exists in countries like India and other countries too. And even I've seen that culture in US in the past 4 years. Even when I was walking down the streets in Pennsylvania, people used to drive their truck past me and they will just yell at me as faggot. And I thought, oh my God, I thought people in US are really friendly, but why are they yelling at me? I, I I couldn't understand. I did not understand. Can you move to the next slide, please? Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we create a change. I know we're going to have a small discussion probably after this session, but I wanted to share with you as to how do we change. I'm a person in the IT industry and a lot of IT strategy, and I always think about a company in terms of people, process, and technology or tools. So I took this little example from one of the change management initiatives that I've run for some of the projects. I've run vendor management office, I've run PMOs. So this was an interesting thing for me because if you look at why trans people are actually bringing a change even in the cultural part of the company, because if you take anyone in the diversity spectrum, not everyone is going to have challenges in terms of bathroom. Not everyone is going to have challenges in terms of gender neutral language. Not everyone is going to have challenges in terms of medical benefits, in terms of how they want to be addressed in the workplace, how the gender markers need to be changed in the workplace, because we are looking at a whole, Y2K kind of issue here. And companies don't want to go there. So they're just always trying to avoid, or if I come out as trans, they probably want you to choose the binaries. So when I came out in one of the client's site, the client told me that, Celia, most of our policies are binary. So if you come out as a woman, you can go here. If you come out as a man, this is where you go. But if you come out in between, where you're gender non-binary or gender non-conforming, you don't have a place in our company. Unfortunately, we are not set up. Then I said, why don't you change your policies? And that's what we need to do. And I've been starting to work with a company. I was in the company's panel today. I spoke to them about how do you bring a change even in clinical trials, diversity in clinical trials, diversity in healthcare management, in the provider industry, in the payer industry, in the policy level, at the CDC level. How do you go and make these changes? If the changes are not there, how do you make them happen? I went to the doctor and I said, Doctor, I have gender dysphoria. You know what my doctor asked me? Oh, is it anxiety? He's a doctor from UCLA and he didn't understand gender dysphoria. And I was curious. I said, why don't you understand gender dysphoria? And he said, see, I have not come across anyone like you. It's just you're the first patient. And I had to educate my doctor about gender dysphoria. I told my whole story. And it was sometimes painful. A lot of them don't go to the doctors because of this. Now, quickly looking at how much we want to look at the changes we want to bring. I don't want to go deep into these points, but these are certain points that you can think about. How do you make changes at an executive level? How does your D&I advocacy, your employee resource group needs to be good? Your allyship programs need to be really, really strong. When you have a women's meeting, you want to have men there. When you have an LGBTQ meeting, you want to have someone who is a friend of the LGBTQ in the meeting too. Because LGBTQ meetings are not just meant for the LGBTQ community. Transgender meetings are not just meant for the trans community, but all the allies, all the friends need to be there to make a difference in that company. Now, I want to move quickly, and also there are changes you have to make in the system, because your systems, if you look at all the SAP systems, it's all mostly male and female. When you put your employee information out there. Lastly, I want to leave you with this amazing thought of being an ally. I am so happy to see you all in this call, and I want you all to be an ally for us. Acknowledge your privilege. Please listen to the community. Learn to unlearn certain things that you have learned already and the preconceived notions that you have about the trans community. Initiate tough conversations, really tough conversations. Educate those around you. And lastly, support by getting involved. Don't just support by saying that I'm just going to sit and say on Facebook, this is what is going to happen. Go out there, talk to the people, talk to our community, and learn, and you will be an amazing ally. And that's what we need today. And that's why I'm in this call, to tell you a story of all the trans people and how you can be amazing allies for us. Thank you so much.